Benji from the bird. Mix my liquor with the herb. Give a fuck about what you flex. I'm just working for a check.
So, although I obviously advocate doing day game as the main means of meeting the opposite sex, I do still think that the other methods do still have their place, and they are, somewhat relevant. So I'm talking about things like, social circle, workplace, dating apps, night game, etc. I do think that day game is significantly better than those other options, but those options are still relevant, and they have, they're kind of like an extra string to your bow in a sense. So although I still think that day game should be the primary method for most guys, if you're trying to optimize this stuff, the other stuff can still be somewhat useful, on the side. And that's the way I see it. It's a bit, it's a bit dumb to get a bit sort of like dogmatic with things and think like, oh yeah, it's only about day game, when you might as well, use other avenues if they are available and they do have, some use or some purpose. So like, if you take like night game for example, sometimes you might find yourself out with friends at night. Why not do a bit of night game? It's not like, oh, I'm a day gamer, I'm not going to approach in a bar or a club. That's just a bit silly, really. Approaching is just approaching, regardless of where you are or what time it is. In my opinion, restricting yourself to the night time is kind of dumb, which is what a lot of people that only do night game do. If you're approaching only in bars and clubs, why wouldn't you extend that to the daytime? It doesn't really make sense not to, really. That's the kind of the way I see it. So approaching is just approaching. Like, who cares where you are or what time it is? Obviously there's going to be differences and nuances and different in respect to the different like context of where you are, but other than that it doesn't really matter. If it's public, you can approach, doesn't matter. So yeah, and like with dating apps, obviously they're pretty shit most of the time, especially in the West. If you go abroad, like to a second world country or maybe Eastern Europe, they can be a little bit better. Depending on the country, they can be significantly better. So they have their use in that sense. So you can actually potentially get a reasonably attractive girl from there if you're lucky, and you have a decent profile. So it has some use in that sense. It's also useful for potentially scouting out a new location to see what kinds of girls are there, see if they take your fancy. You can set your location to another place in advance, and that's a good way to kind of scope things out a little bit. But like, let's say you're in a queue somewhere, or you're taking a shit or something like that, and you've got a bit of time to kill. And you're restricted to just being there, whatever, why not just whip out your phone and do a bit of swiping? Doesn't really hurt, it can help. You never know, really. So it can still be somewhat useful in that sense. Just I wouldn't rely on it, and don't get addicted to fucking swiping on your phone, because that's just really dumb. And yeah, that's all there is really to like dating apps. And then with the social circle, the social circle, I always tell guys, is actually genuinely the best way to meet girls. And the reason for that is because it's essentially a warm approach, and so therefore you've already got some degree of social proof and potentially pre-selection already in place. So in that sense, it's by far the actual best approach in terms of the actual approach itself, because it's a warm approach as opposed to cold approach. The only issue is that there's just a lack of quantity. For most, realistically, most guys, they're not going to have enough options within their social circle, so therefore it is a bit of a shit thing to have to rely on, which is what so many guys do. So many guys, if they're not acquainted with day game, or they don't go out at night or anything, then yeah, they're literally relying on the social circle, or even the workplace, which in my opinion is even worse, because if the relationship goes sour and you have to see each other again in the workplace and other people gossiping, it's not very good. It's not a good vibe, really. But if you do happen to find a friend of a friend, you just happen to meet them in a social environment, then why not you might as well. I know that I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to do it, but if the opportunity has presented itself to me, then yeah, why not? It's worth doing for sure. It's just about not restricting yourself, really, and just exploring other avenues where you can. And let's say you really don't like day game for whatever reason, and let's say like you really prefer one of these other methods. That's fine, but like it's kind of like, why wouldn't you do day game? It's like, why wouldn't you do it? You're walking from A to B, you happen to see an attractive girl walk past you, or just standing somewhere. As you walk past, why wouldn't you at least try and have a little conversation with her and see what happens? You have absolutely nothing to lose and so much to potentially gain. And in terms of time efficiency, when you do it like this, it's incredibly efficient. You lose literally like a couple of minutes of your day to have a little conversation, see what happens. You might as well do it. And so therefore, there's no way you can really rationalize not doing day game in that way. If you're going out for hours and hours and hours and you're doing these long sessions, then obviously that could be very, very draining and tiring. But the long-term view for most guys should be about kind of integrating it into their life, where as they're going from A to B, just living their life, they see an attractive girl, they go up, they have a little conversation, and that's it. Maybe they do like 1 or 2 approaches a day, and that's all they need really. And therefore it becomes really, really efficient. It's a skill set that you have and you're able to employ. And that way it's very, very efficient if you don't have to invest so much time and energy doing it constantly. So the other options, they exist, and it's worth acknowledging that. You might as well use them if you can. And don't kind of restrict yourself. Just see it as like, planting seeds in different places and just seeing what happens really, just optimizing whatever I can do. Thanks for watching. If you want to be able to do what you see me do in these videos, head over to my online course, which covers pretty much everything you need to know about day game to get to a good level and actually implement it in a manageable way. Link is in the description.